Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to What's Happening Dracut special edition here. Today I've had the opportunity to interview Betsy Murphy, Betsy Lurvy Murphy, who
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Who is a member of our school committee. And before I get into some of the questioning and we start conversing here, I just wanted to talk a little bit about how this interview came about. Because Betsy and I had been somewhat estranged over the last few years, but we had been friends, and we had been adversaries on issues and what have you on a few things, but mostly we have a certain level of respect for each other. And when I heard that she was leaving, I was saddened because she is obviously a very good part of the community and does well for the children, and I said some nice things on our show.
You did. They were lovely.
And she reached out to me.
I did.
To say thank you,
I did.
And that began a whole mountain of emotions that came out.
It started with, let's get together for coffee and talk through some things, and I think 3 hours later,
3 hours
we said, oh, maybe we should go move on with the rest of the things we need to do respectively with our day.
This is,
Yep.
that was, I do a lot of coffee talk, as you know, we do a lot of coffee stuff. And, but that was one of the most enlightening and, what's the word I'm looking for? Relieving 3 hours I had, because we found each other as
people?
As people and as friends.
Yep.
Right?
It was very genuine, and I really appreciated
And you know, issues are
appreciated the
issues.
conversation immensely.
Yeah, it meant the world to me too. And we had a little bit of emotion going on back and forth, both of us, and it's good because the political stuff tends to always get us in trouble with people because we don't understand why people are doing the things we do in politics. So Betsy, tell us who Betsy Lurvy Murphy is and where did it all begin?
Well, Lurvy is my maiden name, obviously, and my father and his brothers grew up on a farm here in Dracut. My grandparents were Alice and Draper Lurvy, and the current Lincoln Lane was the land that they owned, that was their farm, chicken farm, which I can't even imagine. My father has many a horror story about having to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to feed the chickens before he went to school. And my brothers and my family and I, every Thanksgiving was at my grandparents' house, and school vacations, and my grandmother, I have some wonderful memories of her cutting flowers out of her garden and teaching me how to make apple pie, and the town really is so important to me because of the legacy of my family. My dad, when he was in high school, became the youth minister at what was the Hillside Church. That church eventually merged with what you would know as the Yellow Meeting House Church. That's the only one that I remember, but I go to church with my grandmother, and
Which is a landmark.
it absolutely is. My dad, I get a chuckle out of this, when he was the youth minister, when he was in high school, and also in college, because he went to Lowell State. He commuted to Lowell State, and some of the people in his youth group were the children of Nancy Shaw, including one Warren Shaw.
Okay.
So I like to tease Warren once in a while that my father tried to save his soul.
Well, we all need a little bit of that, for sure. Yeah.
Really, and just that's a lovely family too. Mrs. Shaw is just one of the nicest people I've ever met, really. My grandmother's maiden name was White, and her brother was a police officer in town, and her father, my great-grandfather, was a pillar of that church. Actually, a little funny anecdote, at least I think it's funny. When I met my husband, who was raised here in Dracut, and he brought me to meet his parents when we were getting serious, my father-in-law, who was a firefighter in town forever, and also an adjunct police officer, he asked me my maiden name, and then I essentially told him the history of my family as I just told you.
Right.
And he said, White? That Arthur White? I said, yeah, he was my great uncle. He said, he was a police officer in town. He put up roadblocks to stop drunk people before people even did that. all of a sudden I was like in. I'm like,
Yeah,
this
there
is
you go.
awesome.
There you
This
go.
is wonderful. So,
So-
I married Michael in that yellow church because the church, the town, the history of my family just means so much to me. My children were baptized there. It means a lot.
A lot of good memories there.
Absolutely.
So what makes Betsy Murphy tick?
Oh, Lord. Well, I'm sure probably different things in different situations, but I guess I'd have to say at my core, the things that my parents and my greater extended family, aunts, uncles, grandparents, taught me were important about life, which is standing up for what you think is right, even if it's not popular.
Exactly.
People have a right to express themselves. People have a right to their opinions. Democracy, we're so blessed to live in a democracy. You need to fight for people who can't fight for themselves.
So we know we've both got ourselves in trouble with that because
Yes,
we
I
both have
have.
a passion for the same
Absolutely,
thing.
and there's
You know?
certainly been more than one moment
Yeah.
where what I might immediately think, I have to think of a way to say it that doesn't hurt people's feelings or say it in a way that's divisive, because sometimes when you're passionate, it can come across that way, even if that's not the goal.
Well, you've got this whole interview is about you, but you have that graciousness to begin with, where
Oh, thank
I
you.
have the edges where I sometimes don't care what I say, and it just comes out. And you know, I can't. You don't take back what you say, but sometimes you feel bad about it. So let me ask you this: who's your hero?
Oh, my Lord. I don't have just one, I'll say that.
Okay.
Most certainly my parents. And I know it sounds like a pat answer, but
No, great answer. Yeah.
my parents, and I suspect both, I have two brothers, Scott and Matthew. I think they would say the same thing, that they taught us the value of education and learning and reading and asking questions and how to say what you think is right. I guess all the things I just told you.
Right.
So definitely my parents. And
So-
certainly I didn't value them, you know, how many times you think when you're a teenager, oh, they're so stupid. And
No.
your parents become much more brilliant as you get older, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, no doubt.
Well, experience is a lot to be said, more than
Correct.
what you gain in any kind of a
Correct.
classroom setting. But let me ask you this: what drew you into public service and public office?
I have always been interested in politics. In fact, when I was in college, I was a political science and history major. I'm fascinated by people and how the power of organizing people to work towards a mission that has value. Probably the love of that came from, once again, my parents. I remember being very young, 1970-ish, and the Vietnam War was raging and Watergate was going on, and certainly didn't understand all of it. I was obviously too young, but my parents exemplified how you get involved in your community, in your world. And I loved that stuff. And my mom and dad campaigned for people, and they would have people to our home. And I think just by nature I'm social. You've
So we
probably
have,
figured out.
Yeah, we have similar paths. My father got me involved in politics at a very young age. I think it was around 8 years old in Chelsea, and he had this friend of his who was a plumber who was running for mayor. Now he had no chance of being mayor, but my father liked him. He was a good friend, and so we were putting flyers out for him. At 8 years old, I was putting flyers on doors and whatever. But
It's almost like you get this bug.
you do.
Right?
It bites you, and
Right.
once it bites you, you're
Yeah.
in trouble.
Yeah.
It's worse than the coronavirus. Once it gets you, it won't let go, because you always want to matriculate back to
Love
it. But
it.
I wanted to ask you, what year did you become elected to the school committee?
2013.
So 2013, and
I ran against Dr. Mack and Mike Miles.
really?
Yeah.
Wow. And you won that seat.
I did.
You and Mike
Dr. Mack and I'd like to remind Dr. Mack that I beat him by a couple hundred votes.
That's good.
Well, you know, when you're running for the first time, you have no record
No.
against which to run.
I always
So
told my
it's
kids.
easier.
I told my kids the first time I ran in Dracut, and we won, and we were at the Village Inn, and we were hugging each other, and I whispered into all my wife and kids, I said, "Enjoy this, because this night is the night I'm going to be most popular. Because after this, you're going to make decisions, and you're going to make
Absolutely.
enemies."
In fact, ironically, the night of the election, the first time I ran and won, Dr. Mack said something similar to me. He said, enjoy your first win, he said, because there's something really special about
It is.
your first win.
It
I
is.
think
It
part of
is.
it's like, oh my gosh, I won.
That's
You
right.
should put your heart and soul into it.
So tell us why you're leaving the school committee.
Well, I'm leaving because I'm moving out of state. And I know, as much as I would love to still be part of it, it's
Right.
illegal, unethical, and otherwise. So
Right.
I had to tender my resignation because it's the right thing to do.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And so you're moving out of state to...
I am moving to Florida.
Florida.
Moving to Florida.
Don't we all wish we could do that? But,
Some people do, some people don't, I guess, right?
Yeah, I guess. My wife wouldn't agree to move permanently because...
Well, you've got grandchildren.
Got grandchildren,
Sure,
too.
of course.
But that doesn't mean I couldn't come down and visit.
Absolutely.
But we've contemplated buying a place for snowbird type thing. But we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
Many people have done that, I believe.
So,
and
so
happy about it.
To you, what was your feeling of what the role of a school committee person was?
When I was first elected, because certainly I would say it's evolved over time
Sure.
with experience. Well, my first year, it was what it should be at the very minimum, which is you as a committee work together to create and improve policy, hire, supervise, and God forbid, potentially fire the superintendent.
Right.
However, in order for those kinds of things to work effectively, you have to work to make collaborative relationships with the colleagues on the school committee.
Right.
And that doesn't mean you have to be best friends.
No.
In fact, I would probably argue it's maybe best you're not best friends, because then those kind of passions can muddy up the waters.
Right.
You work, I did, and I think many of my colleagues on the school committee have reached out to people on the Board of Selectmen to have conversations about, because particularly at that particular time, very different feeling, I think, in town regarding, as Tony Ochinsky would say, the two sides of government
Yeah.
not working as effectively together as they might have.
Did you set any personal goals as a school committee person?
That's a great segue, because yes, one of my goals was to exactly that, to find ways to have conversations with people who disagreed with my view that the Dracut school system needed more funding. I don't think there was any debate about that, and how to make that happen in such a way that everybody could live with it.
Right.
I don't mean live with it, meaning here's a small pittance. I'm talking about having a conversation about what the Dracut Public Schools really need in order to serve all students. And I'm talking students who need language services because they have a language disability, or a student who's nonverbal, who
Correct.
is not, those kind of students, John, you wouldn't and I would not have seen them in school. Because sadly, they either weren't allowed to go to school, which is a tragedy in my opinion,
Right.
or if the disabilities were severe enough, they would have gone to state schools. And we know
Exactly.
some horror stories that happened at state
Yeah.
schools.
And back
horror
in the day
stories.
when I was in school, there were special classes, but they weren't integrated. But my wife and daughter, as you know, are both in special
Educators,
ed.
right?
And
Yes.
they're educators. So my daughter's a special ed teacher, and my wife's a paraprofessional, and has been working with handicapped kids from the beginning. And my daughter matriculated to that profession because of that,
Oh, that's
taking her
nice.
to school and, seeing what the teacher does and what with those handicapped students. I wanted to just segue a little bit from that
Sure.
and talk about COVID for a minute.
Okay.
Because COVID has been a big challenge we faced, obviously, and there's been no bigger challenge than that's been placed on the school committee. So as a teacher and as a school committee person, how would you grade the Dracut school system on, and I know you're going to be biased, but that's okay.
Well, I don't,
But-
there's no way I
and you
can't be
should-
biased.
No,
because
exactly.
I'm so invested
Exactly.
in how well it has gone.
exactly.
I guess I just gave my bias.
How do you challenge?
I haven't been teaching this past year.
Okay.
So I have not had to deal with that challenge as an educator in the classroom.
But you know what they're going through.
I can, my daughter's a paraeducator.
Right.
So I hear about it at home from someone who's on the front lines.
Yeah, exactly.
I believe the feedback I've heard from teachers who have reached out to me, and
Yeah.
and they do, and they should. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want people to feel like you can't reach out to a school committee person
No, they shouldn't.
simply because you're an employee of the school district.
Right.
Other than justifiable let's face it, fear and concern, and they're worried about themselves and their families. And I think that the school district has done a really nice job of working under almost unbelievable circumstances and commands from the state.
Right.
And first, do you remember we had to, gosh, was it before Christmas? I forget. Shut down or go remote the middle school, Richardson Middle School,
Right.
for a week because so many of our staff
Yes.
had to quarantine. There weren't enough staff to teach the children. So I remember when the superintendent was discussing that with us, I said, so if we're making this decision about the middle school, why wouldn't we do it with the other schools? And he explained, well, because we don't have the staffing issues of those schools, and we have to, this may not be, people might not be aware of this, we need to justify to the state when we don't have school. So if we make the same decision about every school in the district
Right.
without the data to back it up,
Right.
that's going to be a real problem. The state is not going to be happy with us. So lots of times what we may want to do as a school committee or the administration, we can't do because we cannot do because the penalty is so high from the state.
Right.
Yep.
So I agree with you. I think that the schools did you guys, I think that.
I didn't do it. It's the teachers.
No, but in town government, you can take credit for the pressures that you're under and the management of the superintendent and the superintendent working with you guys and the staff. You've done a tremendous job under what is certainly an unprecedented situation. I mean, so as far as I'm concerned, it's an A, all the way down the line from the teachers on up. And they need to, everybody wants to get back to school, and we want to get them back into school safely as possible.
Just kudos to everybody for sure. But the people that, one of the groups of people, for me, just deserve hero awards. I believe it's all women that work in the lunch program. All summer long, bag lunches for families, going in early, staying late. They know those kids. They know which kid can't have X, Y, Z.
Right.
They really phenomenally dedicated people. I just have a lot of respect for those folks. And the bus drivers, dear God.
Right. So what's your biggest disappointment as a school committee person, if you have one?
Geez, my biggest disappointment? That I can't run for a fourth term.
There you go. Okay, that's good. And where do you think we can do better?
I'm trying to think. I think there's so many areas where I would like.
Pick one that you think is.
We need more staffing. We need more. And again, I don't think people truly understand the staffing needs of today's public school system as compared to when they went to school.
Right. Staffing, you talk about in-class teaching and
I would like to see more elementary school teachers because I would like the class sizes to be a little smaller.
Right.
I would like to see more adjustment counselors, which is different than a guidance counselor.
Right.
Adjustment counselors are the people that, well, you probably know this, I assume your wife and daughter may have talked about.
Right.
Helping children who have some really tough social emotional stuff to get through the school day.
Those are all good things, exactly. So what do you think is the greatest achievement of the Dracut schools during your term?
Stable leadership.
Very good.
We have allowed the superintendent to, in his administration, to do their job without interference from us. Meaning, this is the committee I've been on for 8 years, and there have been a few changes in the people that sit on that board. However, I will say every single person with whom I've worked on that board is ethical, is not using the school system the way some school committees and places use it to get jobs for their friends or their family, or telling the superintendent behind closed doors, you do X, Y, Z, or else. Or I'm really proud of that fact, because then the administration can have faith that we're working with him in good faith. And I gotta tell you, Stephen Stone works really hard.
Yeah. I see you get emotional about that with Stephen
Well,
Stone, because you have a working relationship with him. And a lot of people misunderstand him, I think, because he's not an introverted person, but he's more of a closed...
I think that, it's unfair to speak for someone else, but I believe that Mr. Stone would describe himself as an introvert, most likely, by nature.
Yeah.
It's just more of his
Yeah.
nature.
That's right. But I think once you get to work with him, you know the type of person he is, which is a good thing. And
Yes.
you just expressed it in your expression and I could see it just coming out of
And
you.
I'll honestly, that, when he was first proposed as one of the people applying to be the superintendent in 2012, I was on the screening committee. And
Okay.
I only knew Mr. Stone by reputation as the special ed director. And there were a number of parents who were not a fan of his candidacy. Again, not an uncommon thing when you're a special education director in any community. There are parents who are disappointed with
Right.
anything that's proposed or not. I guess I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
So I went into that screening committee with an open mind, at least I'd like to think, I guess, but expecting maybe not to be as impressed as I was when he interviewed. It was like,
That's good.
this is a person who really cares about the education of children.
Well, that's,
And that was a
that's
nice
the first
surprise.
person.
Yep,
That's what
and
you should do.
that respect has just grown.
So let's turn to town politics a little bit in the Dracut town itself.
John, you hate talking about town
I
politics.
know.
I don't know why you brought that up.
I'm just, what do you...
I'm teasing you,
I
obviously.
know you do.
Yeah.
What do you think, besides schools, what do you think is the best thing about Dracut?
There's a lot.
There is a lot.
Open space. We still have that, particularly, when you come off 113 and you turn right after Brock's Farm, you take that right onto Methuen Road.
Yeah.
I've had friends of mine who came to my house for the first time get to my home and say, I feel like I just drove through Vermont.
It's beautiful.
It is beautiful. And I
And-
love the fact of how much land has been preserved. I have a soft spot for Helen Dunlap.
Absolutely.
She and my dad went to high school together. She went to my dad's 80th birthday party last year. I have a lot of respect for what she stands for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I first came here, I'm from the city of Chelsea, which is, you could...
A city.
It's a city where you could sit in your kitchen and open the window and reach into your neighbor's kitchen to take the toast off their table. That's how close the houses are.
That's close.
So
Yeah.
me, a small city guy coming in to town like this was what I was looking for.
Well, I
We were
think
looking
you
for the
found it.
space, and I found it. Right.
And plus,
And
weren't you almost in Pelham? You were in East Dracut when you
We're-
lived here when
we
you
were
raised your
in-
family?
Yeah, we were in East Dracut.
Yeah.
We were on Scott Street, which is East Dracut. But when I ran for office, I had to convince people that, hey, I don't want to change the town to a city. And I'm going to be all for open space and preservation and all that stuff, which I was and I am. I still am. But again, it's not about me. But the great things, we mentioned this particular question about politics, but I wasn't really meaning about the politics of the town, because we know the politics in the town can get very, very dangerous and very muddy here, and it's too bad. But
Do you think it's all that different than other communities?
I think it is, to the extent that I do think it's very bad here.
Okay.
Because I come from a city where politics was ruthless in
Okay.
a lot of ways.
All right.
But here, it's ruthless and it's a blood sport, and enemies become enemies forever. Forever. And it's a shame.
That's-
Because like we started this whole conversation about, that we had differences and we drifted apart, and we didn't get back together again until there was an appropriate time, and we did. And I hope we don't ever drift apart again.
Well, forgiveness
But-
is one of God's greatest gifts.
It is. It is. It is. So now, I didn't want to really get too much into the politics, because it's just a very sour thing in Dracut. You can see it in Lowell too, and they think that Lowell politics is bad. And I have conversations all the time with people, and they say, Dracut politics? Why would anybody get involved in Dracut politics? It's so bad, because people pick on each other so badly. But that's for another day.
But nothing changes if nothing changes.
Exactly.
If people don't run that feel differently, it will always be like
Exactly.
that.
But people do get afraid to get into the fight because of the underhanded stuff that goes on behind the scenes.
I understand
So
that.
you do, and I do too. So I fully understand it. So let's just segue for a minute, because we're getting close to the end of the interview here.
Sure.
But I wanted to give you an opportunity, if you wanted to talk about your service as a board member at DATV.
Oh.
You were a board member here.
I was.
For a few years.
Yes, I was.
And you've seen the operation, and I just wanted to see what you might say to the subscribers and to the viewers.
I think the studios, the people that work here, I mean, when Ron was just setting up this whole thing before we started taping, I said to you, what a nice person and what a helpful person. And and I think he's an example of all the people that work here that I've interacted with. I've never met one person that works for this, I guess it's a corporation, right? Whether it be, they're taping graduation or they're doing the school committee meeting at town hall, Mike and Nate and the leadership of Gary. I think that they do a fantastic job. Technically, they're helpful, they're kind. The studios are fantastic. I'd love to see more programming come into the studios. That would be wonderful. But my time on the board, I resigned because I was very frustrated because I felt like whatever efforts I was making to understand what I think were some issues that probably predated me, and then some concerns about how the president was, the president of the board at the time was managing some of the communications with the rest of the board. And I finally I remember one day, after a few months of back and forth, and the lawyer said this, and it got to the point where I was so frustrated that I said to my cousin, who was staying with me for the summer, why am I doing this? Because it was starting to impact my mood, my happiness. And if I was doing it, if I was feeling some frustrations, yet we were working through some issues, I would have been okay with it, because I would have felt like, okay, we're moving forward. You're always going to have frustrations working on something with other people. That's inevitable. It got to the point where I said, nothing, it feels like nothing I do, say, or otherwise has any impact on alleviating the tensions or the issues. It seems like we deal with one and kind of put it to bed, and then something else pops up. And I looked at my cousin and I said, this just isn't worth it. I feel completely ineffectual. And she said, I don't blame you. And that's when I sent the resignation letter to Alison Volpe.
I know. The whole thing with that whole episode was, as you mentioned, the former president. It was an implosion of a friendship, and because of a paragraph in a document, and because he couldn't acquiesce graciously to the wishes of the majority, he blew up the whole thing. Started talking on social media about the board members and what have you, and talked about private conversations between each other, trying to get the thing under control, to the point where he at least reasoned with what he was doing over a stupid sentence. And lifelong friendships are gone over it.
It's my understanding, and that's always really sad. Right,
it is sad, but it's even sadder that the bubble over is used by political forces to attack their enemies. So that's where it becomes the board members who are dedicated board members down here. I'm one of the original members of the board, the last original member of this board. So don't think
Mr. Lyons, Dr. Mack, May Paquette,
May
is that right?
Paquette.
Yep.
Don't think for a minute that I would do anything to hurt what my passion is. And we talked about this off air before we started. I went to school for this stuff.
I know.
So this is what
something I learned about you.
I'm loving doing.
Yeah. You do seem kind of in your element, I guess is the way I put it, when you're doing your show. And
people say that. I'm glad that comes across, because it's true.
It does.
So we'll move on from that session. You are doing something great as you end up segueing into your new life in Florida and sunny beaches and sand in the toes. I'm so jealous.
Oh yes, I'm very much looking forward to it.
So you're going to be a moderator or a host or a co-host for a mock town meeting.
Yes.
What's that project?
I'll tell you about the project. I'm very excited about it. I wanted to do it for several years now, and just for whatever reason, never got it done. I will not be the moderator of the event. I'll tell you the structure of it, and hopefully, maybe if anybody has any questions that ends up seeing this piece before that time. They can reach out to me at my Dracut Public Schools email. That'd be lovely. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Right.
I got in touch with a gentleman named Bill Frangimore, who retired as the business manager of the Dracut Public Schools.
Correct. I remember him well.
Lovely man. When he worked for Dracut, he lived in Dracut. So when we had town meeting, he had the right and the honor to sit
Sure.
in the voting section.
Exactly.
And he almost generally sat in the vicinity of myself and maybe some of the other school committee people. And over the few years that happened, I came to realize through conversations that he is, I don't know if it's certified or he's, whatever credential is given to people who are town moderators, he's got it.
Oh,
and he was a town moderator for another community in Massachusetts where he lived before moving here. So, and then again, time goes by and something might happen at town meeting I didn't really understand. So I started turning to Bill and saying, what's this? And I thought, what a perfect person to call to see if they'd be willing to work with me on this project. And he immediately said, absolutely, love to do it. And then I reached out to Phil Thibault because he is a great expert on town meeting from my point of view. He thought it was a great idea as well. And then I was chatting about it with Renee Young, who's the newest member of the school committee.
Right.
Great addition to the school committee.
That's awesome.
Yep, and it's nice to see.
I don't know Renee, and I look forward to meeting her sometime soon, hopefully.
Yep, she's a go-getter, that one.
That's good.
She's bright. She's a teacher herself in Billerica.
Yep.
And she has young children. It's nice to see, I guess, the generation below me starting to get involved. So we met and we decided we were going to have town meeting 101, but to display how it works, we would do a mock town meeting where Mr. Frangimore will act as the moderator. We just don't want people to think we wouldn't want Mr. Maliaris involved because he is our town moderator.
Yeah, right.
He just had a conflict and he couldn't join us the night we were doing it.
Okay, that's
so,
good.
Yeah.
That's good. So you're gonna actually try to teach people and educate people
Yes,
on what town meeting
exactly.
is and what the process is at town
Absolutely
meeting.
the case.
So that's
Kathy
a good
Graham.
thing.
Kathy Graham has been phenomenally helpful.
a great thing.
She has agreed to be there that evening too.
Awesome.
So we won't have to have somebody play the town clerk. We're going to have our town clerk.
Yeah, that's good.
And people will have certain roles, and when they, I guess, act out their role, they'll explain to the people, hopefully that will come to the auditorium, what they're doing, what their role is, and we're hoping that people come and ask questions.
Sure.
There's no better way to understand something and really educate yourself than by doing it.
Absolutely. And maybe it'll take some of the stigma off about people being shy to get up there and speak.
Well, it's
because
intimidating.
neighborhood.
You know, you
It
have to
is.
walk down to the front and then you're speaking, you and I have both done it, spoken
Right.
at into the microphone and you're looking out, but you really don't see people. You see almost like the light here in the studio.
Right.
You're like
Exactly.
almost literally
Exactly.
a deer in headlights.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a great thing, and I urge
Very,
everybody to go to
very
that. And what's the
excited
time
about
that's going to be on?
7 o'clock, March 24th,
Okay.
the Dracut High School Auditorium.
Mark your calendars down for that. That's going to be an important night for anyone
I
that
think
doesn't know.
you said you're going to be able to join us?
I'm going to be there.
Wonderful.
I'll be there, absolutely.
I hope we have some teenagers go.
Yes, I'll try to encourage some of the younger folks. I
That
know
would be
to come.
lovely. Thank you.
So town elections are coming up, and
And I won't be able to
there-
vote.
I know. There's nothing more important in a town than the local level of elections, because
Yep.
that is where the whole town is run. I mean, and who
probably
you
will-
have in
Right.
those positions are very important to where we're going.
Yes, and it probably affects your life on a day-to-day basis much more closely than state or national politics.
And more than anybody realizes. They
Probably.
don't realize it. They don't realize that the police come, that's because of the town government. The school committee, that's because of town government.
Mm-hmm.
The rubbish being collected, town government. The street sweeper, town government. It's all water coming in. It's all
All the town
evolves around
services.
town services.
Yep.
When you go to town hall to get a birth certificate, town government. So you need to know what's going on, and usually people don't know until they need it.
Sure.
Right? So this town election is going to be full of candidates, particularly in the schools.
I
And
know, 4 people running for 2 seats.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot to endorse anybody or anything like that, but
Well, I'm certainly endorsing Joe Wilkie.
I will say that. I was going to
No,
say,
I doubt in my mind.
your endorsement as an incumbent that's retiring from that position carries an enormous amount of weight.
Oh,
Now, And it just gives credibility to the candidate you endorse. Now, I'm not saying anybody controls X amount of votes or whatever, but you could influence somebody by saying, you know, I like that Betsy person. You may not even know them.
Well,
I like that Betsy
Sometimes
person.
people vote for, when I first moved to town,
Strange reasons.
I called my sister-in-law because she was so knowledgeable and involved in town politics.
Yeah,
I needed some advice on kind of where to go and what to do.
sure.
And I
sure.
trusted her opinion. So you're absolutely right. That
So
matters.
there's 2 seats.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, we want to mention that Sue Gufagafis has relinquished her seat.
Mm-hmm.
She's not running for re-election, and I hope to have a sit down with her.
Yes.
I think you are probably breaking the ground for something like that, and I'd like to have her come in and talk about her experience, even though it was only for 3 years.
I can't imagine, well, I shouldn't speak for her, but
Yeah.
she is articulate and thoughtful.
Absolutely.
And I know is very dedicated to the town, the school system,
Right.
always speaks at town meeting.
Yes.
And that's
She's been very
not
vocal on a lot of
common.
issues, but which is good. You need that. And
We do.
Agree or not agree, you need people
Absolutely.
to push back because the making of the sausage is ugly, but the sausage tastes good at the end, right?
Can't
If it's
disagree with
made
that.
right.
Can't
So,
disagree with
so you support Joe Wilkie, and he's
Without a doubt.
he's been an outstanding. You know, we've disagreed on different things, and again,
How would you not? Joe and I have disagreed,
exactly. So, but his heart's in the right place too.
no doubt.
So, is there anyone else on there that you have a particular lean towards, or somebody else that you may, if you don't, you don't? As simple as that.
Well, I know, not well, I know 2 of the 3 other candidates.
Right.
There's a third woman whose name is Rosemary, I believe, and I've forgotten her last name.
Espinal.
I don't know her, I've
Yeah.
never met her. So I have no opinion because I don't even know who it is.
Right.
I know
I don't know her either.
Mrs. I just changed her status to married. I know Ms. Duda because she
Oh,
was a
yeah.
teacher in
Right.
Dracut Public Schools. She taught at the middle school when my children went through that school.
Correct.
They didn't have her as a teacher. They both landed on whatever the other team was. So they
Yeah,
had
right.
a different social studies teacher. Certainly, I know she was very involved with many aspects of students' lives, and I think she's very dedicated to her own education. I believe she's gotten a doctorate in the
Right.
last few years, and she works in Lowell now.
Right.
Um,
And Jill Amano?
Jill
is it?
Amano, yes, who
Very impressive individual, by the way.
I met her when I signed her papers.
Okay.
It's always nice. I thought she was very well-spoken, passionate about what she can bring to the school committee. She has a young child, which I would never argue you have to have children
No,
to be on the school committee. I think I don't agree with that.
that's true.
Having said that, I think it's nice to see people who have young children who are really, let's face it, if you have your children in the school system, you have an additional investment. And I don't know how old her child is, but I don't even think her child is school age yet. So she's definitely going to be very invested about what happens as a potential school committee candidate.
Correct.
My understanding is, I believe she's an attorney. And I
didn't know that.
Yes.
That's good.
Yep.
Yeah.
I heard that from I heard actually from Warren Shaw, as a matter of
Okay.
fact.
I've never met her, but I've heard people
She
talk
might
about
be shorter
her.
than me. It's a possibility. One person that I've met in Dracut that might be shorter than me. I think she's like 5 feet tall.
Not that that has anything
Not
to
that
do
has
with
anything to do
anything.
with
Right.
I-
But so that's good. That seems like a good rounded candidacy right there.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Okay. So let's move on to selectmen.
Okay.
We have Phil Thibault, who's been a candidate many times, and
Hey, 5th time's a charm.
yeah, exactly.
That's what I told him. 5th time's a charm, Phil.
Absolutely. And there's no secret. I'll be supporting Phil's candidacy, and I know
As will I.
you support him, and you will
No doubt.
also. And so, I mean, there is always a time when we should have change. And there should be a time, and I felt it. There's a time when you should know when it's time to relinquish it over to somebody else.
I agree.
Unless you're just power hungry, and your ego won't let you do it. You know what I mean?
Sometimes it's just time to leave the party.
Right, exactly. So we hope that we're very enamored with Phil Thibault. We want Phil to.
The one wish in regard to Phil, is that when I've had conversations with him one-on-one or maybe with one or two, the passion that comes out about this town.
Right.
And how much he cares about it, and how, and the plans he'll share about how to get certain things done to benefit the town, whether it be more small businesses in town or
Correct.
the fire station that he.
Bingo.
Right, I think bring that passion to the public, because I think folks don't know that part of him,
Right.
and he lights up when he talks about it.
It does.
Yeah.
He does.
And I'd really like other people to see that part of him.
Yep. I think we will. I think we'll see it this time.
I hope
think
so.
I think he's ready to make that transition. So
Mm-hmm.
hopefully we do. There are other small positions being run for that for in the town ballot. Billy Zielinski's running for water commissioner.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a candidate for the water moderator, which is the most obscure position in the town. It's one meeting, and you run a meeting, and that's it. So, but we're not going to get into that. We're going to wrap this up, right? Because I think we've had a very engaging talk, and it's been a pleasure
Well,
to
you and
talk
I,
with you.
we're not people that have a problem having conversations.
No way. You put 3 hours on a coffee? We
Yeah,
could
I know.
sit here for 3 hours
I know.
easily. But finally, as you end your career here, what is it that you would like to say to your colleagues, and most importantly, to the town of Dracut people?
Oh, you're going to bring me to tears. I was on another radio. I was on a radio show over the weekend, and
Mhm.
I shared that when I submitted my resignation, once I hit send to Kathy Graham, I just burst into tears because this is a labor of love for me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to miss it terribly because it's just my passion. Education for all children, and what can happen when people come together and work together collaboratively without personal agendas. Magic happens. And magic happened, I believe, over the last 8 years on this school committee, because we worked so hard. And gosh, the first year I was on the committee, the year before they had to lay off was, I forget the number, 60, 70 teachers and staff. And look how far we've come back. I'm getting teary. I have so much hope.
See, this is what,
Maybe hope. I have so much hope
That's
for where
great.
they're going to go from here.
that's great.
And I think they're going to have a nice mixture of people who have a lot of institutional knowledge, who've been Joe and Allison, because I'm relatively sure Joe will win his seat.
I think
And
so.
then, Renee's obviously finishing her first year.
Right.
And then maybe, however the other people play out, there'll be new people. So,
You could see why I said what I said on the What's Happening Dracut when we heard your resignation was coming in, and how I said that, you are passionate about this.
I am.
And-
Yep, it's my thing.
And,
Yep, and your words meant a lot to my daughter, so,
Oh, well.
a lot to my daughter.
Obviously, like I said, it was from the heart, and I mean it.
I
meant it.
know.
So we wish you all the best
Thank
in
you
your
very much.
future, and wish you nothing but health and happiness in Florida for you and your family.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for coming on here today.
It was my pleasure.
My pleasure, too. I'd love to hug you. Folks, that's the
We'll
end
be
of
turned
this.
into the COVID police.
I know, that's okay. I'm half vaccinated, so we're all set.
Okay.
I'll be vaccinated the rest of the way. So, folks, thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll have this airing very soon.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.